The LRTimelapse Pro Timer 3 is the latest and absolutely greatest time-lapse remote to hit the market. In this video, I will be doing an overview of what it is, how you use it, what I think of it, why you should get one, and how it can make your time-lapses even better. Quick disclaimer, I was sent this for free in exchange for this video, but I would have bought it myself and made this video anyway, because I'm a big fan of this thing, as I am of the previous model. Anyways, let's begin. So what is the PT3, as I'll call it from now on, because LRTimelapse Pro Timer 3 is a bit of a mouthful. The PT3 is a universal camera remote designed and made specifically for time-lapse and astrophotographers. It comes in a plastic housing with a big, very high contrast OLED screen. It has a metal knob on the side to interact with the menus, a power switch, a USB micro port, two 2.5mm jacks with ridges alongside it for tactile feedback, two cold shoe mounting points, and two eyelets to attach a loop or a strap. So why does this remote exist, right? Well, this was developed by Gunther Wegner, the developer or the programmer or the software coder, whatever you want to call him, the genius behind LRTimelapse, the specialized time-lapse editing software that is used by literally every single professional time-lapse photographer I know. If you want to know more about LRTimelapse, check out my overview video here, which I need to update ASAP. Anyways, let's talk about this remote. So there's something wrong with pretty much every time-lapse remote on the market. What they do to trigger a photo in a camera, as you would with a normal shutter button, is they send two signals. One signal sends the autofocus signal, and the second signal sends the trigger signal. What happens when your camera receives this first autofocus signal is obviously it's going to try and autofocus. Now, time-lapse photographers don't use autofocus, we use manual focus, but even though your camera is on manual focus, it will still slow down and get this autofocus signal and try and do something. It's not really doing anything but locking down the camera, stopping you from changing your settings or from reviewing your histogram in between photos, for example. So this remote does not send that autofocus signal. So straight away, you have much better dark times than with a normal time-lapse remote. In short, it is a much more efficient way to trigger your camera for time-lapse photography. When and where would you use this remote? Well, for starters, just for any normal time-lapse sequence. A lot of cameras still don't have a proper built-in intervalometer. You would also use it for when you want to plan a time-lapse. For example, you want to plan your camera or you want to schedule your camera to shoot a sunrise so you can stay in bed snoozing. It allows you to do a delayed or a scheduled capture like we've seen on the GoPros lately. It also allows you to set up a recurring time-lapse, meaning, for example, you only want to shoot during the daytime hours for a construction site. When you're shooting astro time-lapse sequences where you need longer exposure times than you can do in manual mode with your camera, you can switch it to bulb mode and have this trigger a very long extended exposure. It's also a great normal bulb remote for your astro shots where you want to, for example, shoot on an astro guided tracker, whatever, and you want to use really long exposures. This does that as well. When you want to shoot with two cameras at the same time, for example, set up in a panoramic or on a panoramic bracket and you want to trigger them at exactly the same time, that's why you have two ports on here. Speaking of these two ports, one features two ridges and one features one ridge, gives you a little bit of tactile feedback when you're setting up in the dark, for example. You would also use it when you want to shoot with an interval that is less than 1 second. I still haven't seen a camera on the market that features an interval lower than 1 second. So this allows you to set up a 0.6 second interval, for example, and then you can adjust the interval in 0.1 second increments, which is great for very finely tuned shots. One of the key things in this that not many other things allow you to do is to ramp your interval. For example, you want to go from a 3-second interval to a 15-second interval for longer night shots. This allows you to gradually change that interval over an extended period of time, which means that you don't get a hard jump in your speed on playback. How is the 3 different from the 2.5? Honestly, it's not hugely different. The biggest difference, literally, is this screen. The screen is double the pixels and almost 3 times the size, which means that the layout on the screen is much better as well for all the crucial information you need while you're shooting. Besides that, it's got a different aluminum knob this time for a slightly more precise control. As mentioned, these two ports now feature ridges and the USB port is connected to a better charging controller. I'm not an electronics guy, but apparently it is better for retaining the battery charge when the remote is powered off. In the new firmware, which also applies to the 2.5 by the way, we now have better support for mirrorless cameras. Oh, and I forgot to mention this screen now is covered in scratch resistant glass, which is nice to protect that precious OLED. How do you use this remote with only one button? Well, there's a power button, you turn it on, and then you have this one. And pretty much you turn up and down and click and long click to select settings or confirm settings. It is very simple and very intuitive to use, and I'll show you now briefly how you set up a simple time-lapse shot with it. Keep in mind, to connect it to your camera, you need the correct cable. So Canon, Nikon, Sony, Lumix, Fuji, they all use different connectors on the camera side, but on this port side, you can find that cable quite easily. It's just a 2.5mm jack that you find in a lot of headphones as well. Anyways, let's set up a time-lapse with this. Scroll to time-lapse in manual mode, hence the M. Set your interval, as you can see, minimum 0.6 seconds, and then you can go up, you know, in your short 0.1 seconds increments, I guess, all the way up to however long you want it, very, very long. Short click, number of shots, which now also shows you with the correct frame rates how long your shot will be and how long it will take to shoot and when it will finish. This is absolutely fantastic. Short click to confirm, and then you get a little overview of what the shot's going to do, and then you hit start, and boom, you get a little countdown, and we're off. It shows you the remaining time of the shot, it shows you how many shots have lapsed, it shows you your interval, it shows you the remaining shots, and it shows you the length of shooting already. So it's got all this information on that screen. And the best thing of all, while you're shooting, you do a short tap of the side. You can choose to pause it, you can choose to ramp your interval, as I mentioned earlier, you can change the number of total shots, and you can turn on the flashlight. And this is one of my favorite things that I'll be talking about in the next bit, things I love about this remote. So as you've just seen, it shows you all the necessary information that you need on the screen right there. Not many other remotes do this because these are not remotes that are built with time-lapse photographers in mind. And this thing is custom built specifically for us time-lapse freaks. I also really love that it allows you to change the number of shots while you are shooting. This is crucial when, for example, something is happening in your shot that you did not expect to happen, like, I don't know, some cool moon comes in your shot or a couple of planets, and normally you have to wait till it's done and then restart it, but now you can just extend the shot by adding extra shots to your sequence. You can set up a custom shot and then save that as a configuration. The built-in flashlight is one of the coolest little things on there. By the way, you can also entirely turn off the screen for when you're shooting astro and you want no light pollution at all. But the screen also works as a flashlight by just blasting out full brightness, which works great for foreground painting. It's got a nice color temperature to it as well, quite neutral, so good for when you want to color grade some stuff afterwards. But yeah, this little flashlight is very useful, and that's definitely a big upgrade from the 2.5. If you see how much bigger this screen is, there's much more light coming off this one. I love that it is super simple to use. It is very well thought out. Even if you are in the cold, and it works apparently up to -20 or more, you are shooting in the cold with gloves on most of the time, and you still get all the operations possible on this remote because it is just such a genius design with a big turning knob and short or long taps on that knob. It's got multiple mounting options, which I always appreciate. And look, it is just a thing that is constantly getting updated with new options, new firmware, functional upgrades for the previous model as well. It's made by someone that has changed the world of time-lapse, and I just think it's fantastic. It is a little bit pricey, but it is a very niche product for a niche type of photographer, I guess. And you get it once and you just have it forever, and it will keep getting firmware upgrades, and it just works, and it makes life so much easier. Time is money, so why waste money and time by dicking around with products that aren't made specifically for what you're trying to do? This thing was invented, designed, and made for the time-lapse nut like myself, and maybe like you are as well. And I think that really shows in the design and the firmware and the usability, etc. If you want to buy it, you can find my affiliate purchase links in the description down below, and that's pretty much it. I would love to find out what remote you use right now, or do you use just the built-in timers like I use on the Lumix all the time? And then finally, a request: could you follow me on Instagram, please? I'm trying to get to 100K this year. I'm currently at 83, so that leaves me with about 17,000 followers left, which is all right, I guess. Maybe that's doable for 2021. Let's go. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully see you on the next video. Goodbye.